Welcome to another episode of Growth Marketers Podcast. I'm Samuel Timothy.
And I'm Taylor Rowe. Today's episode, we dove a little bit deeper into one topic that we've talked a bit about on the podcast. It's a lot about attribution and specifically about a phenomenon or channel or buzzword, whatever you want to call it, called dark social or referred to dark social. So we dove into how, as marketers, can we continue to add value and drive qualified leads and sales when attribution may not be clear or things that are happening offline that may be out of our control. So hopefully there's some good strategies in here that you can take and implement into your business. Let us know in the comments how this has affected you as a marketer and in your business. And as always, give us a like, give us a subscribe. So hopefully enjoy the episode.
So Taylor, I know there's a lot of conversation around, what channels really works the best when it comes to attracting new customers. And we all know, without a doubt, word of mouth is still by far the best way to reach customers and get people to buy. But we all know it's also one of the most unpredictable and one channel that you can't really measure. So we want to get into that today and talking a little bit more about how people can actually amplify the word of mouth, and also how can you have a better control on measuring whether or not it's actually working.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. As B2B marketers, sometimes it's hard to admit that word of mouth is typically really the best marketing channel. I mean, if you look at and you talk to any sales department, referrals from existing customers, I mean, they close at extremely high rates. They stay around for a long time. They come with a built-in sense of trust. As people, we've always made purchase decisions that way, right? I see it a lot in the consumer market, specifically on like a Facebook or something like that. You'll see people ask like, who do you recommend for tree trimming? Or I'm looking for a babysitter, whatever that would be. I mean, anything where you feel like, hey, I need to find someone I can trust, you ask your peers, right? And to be honest, regardless of the level of, I guess, expertise that someone has, like just in experience, someone would say, like, I give that example of a tree trimmer, is like, if you got your tree trimmed one time, you might pipe up in that conversation and say, hey, this is who I use. They did a great job. Even if you've had no experience with any other tree trimming business, and all of a sudden that company has that built-in credibility and authority, right? And so what we want to talk about today is like two things. One is, what does that mean for us in terms of our marketing and our attribution? And two, like you said, how can we scale something like that seems to be so unscalable? And the truth is, it's the reason we don't like it as marketers. We talk about word of mouth, referrals, those kind of things. It's just very difficult to track and measure and show attribution, right? If we're a marketing team and we're in a board meeting, it'd be much easier to point and say, we spent $10,000 on Google Ads, we got $100,000 in return, right? Every single click, we see the attribution, we see what they looked at our website, they converted. Same thing with social media ads. It's just not that simple, right? There's a lot of sharing that happens. There's a lot of conversations that happen offline. And it's not a direct line of, linear path to conversion, if you will. So what I want to talk about is this idea of what's kind of referred to in terms of like a buzzword. It's just referred to as dark social. And what really that means is just social interactions that are happening. It doesn't necessarily even have to be social media, but social interactions that are happening that ultimately lead to that word of mouth type referral traffic or leads to your website. So examples would be chats, messenger, direct messages on LinkedIn, emails, phone calls, text messages, right? So as a marketer, let's just give a very specific example. It's like, as a marketer, let's say you create tons of content, you're putting a lot of effort into blog posts or social media posts, and I see a post on social media that I think is something that's really great for our business. I take a screenshot of that post, I post it in, Microsoft Teams or chat, Slack message. I send it to you and say, hey, I think this is something we should look at. And then you go to their website and, fill out a form, or you reach out to a sales rep, right? As a marketer, you accomplished exactly what you're trying to do, but it might be the most frustrating thing in the world because you have no idea where that lead came from. And if you're so focused on tracking attribution and looking at ROI per channel and really getting down in really what I would think is overanalyzing it, you're going to be spinning in circles because you can't attribute that. But in reality, that's a huge percentage of how business happens. That's how people operate, is through those type of non-trackable, so to speak, interactions.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I was alluding to earlier, we all know word of mouth is extremely powerful because, people take other people's, recommendations and advice very seriously because that's someone's real world experience of using that product or service or the company. And then they know that, hey, I can save a lot of headache by not using this, this recommendation because I know that they already kind of went through that same process or the product or whatever the case might be. So I think we all know it's super important, but then we don't know how to really replicate what happens in the real world in conversations with your neighbor, asking who did your offense. In the real world as marketing, as marketers in the B2B space, how do you make that same sort of conversations happen at large, right? So what are some practical ways we can influence that? And we know that it's happening, like you said, that dark web is probably where, dark social is where it's happening. But how do you influence as marketers to make such conversations happen very organically?
Right. So I think we need to look at this happening and instead of looking at it as, oh man, like we can't track these channels because such a high percentage of it is happening offline, or it might not even be that we can't track it. It's that we're attributing it to the wrong channel. So for example, they explain the scenario I just outlined of I saw something, I took screenshots, send it to you, you go to the website and convert. That's going to come as a direct conversion, right? It's going to show up in your Google Analytics or HubSpot or whatever you're using as direct traffic because you went directly there. Or maybe you didn't go directly there because I didn't even send you the link. I sent you a screenshot. Maybe you went to Google and typed in the company's name and then went, and now all of a sudden it's attributed to organic search, right? So what do you do as a marketer? Do you look at that and say, let's dump more money into SEO? SEO is our number one channel. What do you do if all of a sudden month over month your direct traffic is growing, right? What do you attribute that to? And I think that's part of it, is just understanding the bigger picture. Is like, what are we doing as a marketing department? We're looking to generate qualified leads. We're looking to influence pipeline, right? We're looking to influence the actual amount of opportunities and revenue we have in the pipeline. And that's the ROI you should look at, as like total marketing spend, total pipeline influence, and sometimes stop nitpicking those individual channels because of things that are happening. Like if you see a correlation, we're spending more money on social media, and then each month, as we spend more money on social and as we create better content, we're getting more direct traffic, we're getting more leads. Like it doesn't take a rocket science to understand like, hey, there's some sort of correlation there. So to go back to your question, like what can we do? We need to create more opportunity for this to happen, which means we need to focus more on education. We need to cast a net within the audience that we're trying to influence. And we need to ultimately get more customers, right? Because if word of mouth is the most powerful marketing channel that we have, that means we need more customers. We need to make those customers more happy. We need to have interactions with them and understand what would get, have them be so excited and so happy that they would share that with somebody else. And for whatever reason, I think that's a missing piece of a lot of people's marketing initiatives, is like we're so focused on things that we can measure in some performance-based marketing channels. Is like we're looking at these numbers, at the clicks, the cost per clicks, the conversion rates, and everything is just numbers and not so much of like the people that you're actually trying to market to. So as marketers, all we're trying to do is create more opportunities for our demographic to see our content, to engage with our brand, more opportunities for people to come to our website, more opportunities for our sales reps to have conversations with potential customers. And by doing that consistently, creating more opportunities, creating more face time, creating more value, you're going to inherently start getting this aspect of it where we're building credibility and trust through referrals, through word of mouth. So it might not be the answer that, again, every analytical type marketer wants to hear, is like, how do we track all of this? And I think there's some ways you can track it with certain sharing links and those kind of things. But overall, less focus on attribution and attributing to the right channel, and more focus on creating opportunities to get in front of our audience.
Yeah, and I think just to kind of reiterate what you mentioned earlier, you are going to see a direct, you're going to probably see an increase in the direct traffic. You're probably going to see an increase in the organic search of your brand name. Those are probably all indications. So I think one of the ways that I guess marketers can do a better job of measuring if there are some word of mouth influenced overall increase in sales is probably to have some sort of a benchmark reports on, hey, when we started as our company, or when we started our marketing, here's where we were in terms of our total organic traffic. Here's how many organic searches were happening for our brand name. And then here's now what our total organic traffic or our direct traffic, how has that increased over time? Because I think that might be one way to see all the impact of every sort of marketing campaigns that are happening that's actually influencing the total search traffic that comes to your website that's probably around your brand name or someone coming directly to your site.
Right. And just a couple of stats. There's a couple of studies that I was doing some research before we had did this podcast. There's a company called Rhythm One who did a study a couple of years ago, actually. And at the time, it was about 84% of, according to their study, about 84% of shares happen via dark social, meaning channels that are not trackable in the traditional metrics, right? When I say that is like when you post something on LinkedIn or Facebook, if the people share that on that same channel, they go and click share and they share it to their page or share it to their friend or something like that. You get metrics on that. But anything other than that, copying a link, sending it in, text message, taking a screenshot, sending it via Slack, anything along those lines, conversations on the phone, like, oh, I actually just saw a post about this the other day. Have you checked out, company X, Y, and Z? Those kind of things are not trackable in that perspective, right? And I think it's important to understand when you're creating content and when you're, again, your goal as a marketer is to get in front of your audience, right? That's what we're all trying to do, is like capture the attention of our audience. So you also have to understand like the stage of the funnel, if you will, that they're in the format of the content. So a perfect example is this podcast, right? I mean, we happens to us all the time. I'll have conversations with people that say, I listen to your podcast all the time, this and that. And so it's like someone that listens to this podcast or a podcast, they can go to, they're listening on Spotify, they can actually copy that link, or they listen on Apple, and they copy that link and they text it to a friend, right? This gets posted on YouTube, same thing, copy the link, send it in Messenger, right? And so like that interaction, like that might get you, in terms of metrics that you're tracking, you might see one additional view, right, on that video, or 2 additional views. And it may seem inconsequential, but like now that is coming from, let's say a CEO of a company watched the video, sent it to their marketing manager and said, hey, can you reach out to this company, right? That one view turned into one lead that already comes with inherent credibility. It's like, hey, my CEO asked me to reach out to you. So there's a lot more than just the numbers. It's the people behind the numbers and where they're at in the stage, in the funnel, if you will. So like I said, it's the content that you're creating that's top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, that education content that this happens with most time. And the problem is those, as you mentioned, the attribution shows up in those bottom of the funnel metrics, direct traffic, organic search. It could be even paid search, right? They could go to Google search, they click on a branded ad, and all of a sudden you get credit to the paid search team or the paid search agency. And it's not saying that interaction isn't important or you shouldn't pay for that click, but it's just understanding like doing that alone is not the same results as doing everything. And you're going to get better results by continuing to focus on these opportunities for education that lead to those shareable moments.
Yeah, and I think this is where maybe an ABM or account-based strategy is also pretty effective, because I think in the traditional sense, when you're talking about B2B marketing, you're thinking about try to get somebody from like your particular decision maker to consume your content, convert into a lead, and then have a sales conversation and ultimately close into a deal. But if you are trying to work the entire account, then you can actually have content being naturally promoted to the entire organization or specific departments, and having them consume that content and then get the word across the whole organization, right? So if someone finds value in whatever content they consumed, it's very natural for them to actually, like you said, just copy and paste the link and put it in Slack channel and say, hey, I just read this blog, or I saw this case study, or whatever the case might be. And then that word gets around the whole organization. And now all of a sudden you just influence that entire company. And so I think account-based strategy has some way it can actually help increase this word of mouth conversations happening inside organizations for sure.
Yeah. And unfortunately, again, as marketers, we'd love to be able to like sit back and look at a chart and show, hey, this person opened our direct mail that we sent to them. They opened our email, then they went to the website, then they watched a video on YouTube, and then they did all these kind of things, right? Then they shared this message in Slack to their peer, and now all of a sudden it spread, and now 4 or 5 people within the organization are looking at the website, or then they messaged a peer on LinkedIn because they saw they were connected with the CEO. Like, you wish you could track all of that, but you can't. But in reality, that's how people make purchase decisions, right? Especially big ticket, B2B, ultimately relationship driven and relationship based organizations. It's always going to be that way. Mm-hmm. So it's understanding that as marketers, like, we know that that's the case. So now how do we influence it, right? It's just understanding the variables that we're like, it's like, play with the cards that you're dealt. It's like, here's the reality of the situation. This is how people make decisions. It's always going to be based on trust, credibility, conversations that ultimately happen offline. So if that's the case, how can I give myself, my company, the best opportunity to be in those conversations, right? And sometimes that's doing things that are not trackable, not scalable, so to speak, but doing that consistently over time is where you're going to get enough volume where it then becomes scalable, right? Because again, more customers you bring on, the more opportunity you have for those word of mouth opportunities. So that's really the gist of it. And again, unfortunately, it's not all trackable. Again, I think there's certain tools that you can leverage to track things. I think, early on in the social days, they, tools like Bitly and those kind of things help with that, because it's like, if people are going to copy and paste this link, at least we can see how many hits it has and how many shares it has. But again, you're not going to be able to, at least not legally, track people's phone calls and conversations unless you're working at Facebook or something like that. So yeah, unfortunately, you can't track it all. But over time, again, if you're just tracking marketing spend, marketing output to inbound leads, pipeline influence, those kind of things, you're going to see that trend, and it's going to be trackable. There's going to be a little bit of gray area in between.
Yeah, I guess the good news is essentially with the access of digital platform, we're able to reach people much broader than a neighbor telling another neighbor who cut their trees, right? So I think that's the beauty of it, right? We're able to influence accounts and organizations and companies across the world through digital channel by having the ability to promote content that you're creating and creating it at scale, and increase the likelihood of having a lot of organic conversations that ultimately leads to the
Correct.
Word of mouth.
That's the beauty of it, right? Is the beauty of social is the reach, the scalability, is like everything that we're trying to do. It's just where marketers get frustrated and I think give up is like, there's no traction. I'm creating the content, I'm promoting it to the right people, I'm connected with the right people on LinkedIn, and I just get nobody's liking, no one's commenting, no one's engaging, no one's sharing, all those kind of things. And you do that for a couple months and then you give up. And that, unfortunately, is what I would say 90% of marketers I see do in the B2B space. The companies that grow consistently, and we see it all the time. We just talked about a company's like their organic traffic. If you look at organic just through those tools, went from like 60,000 to 1 million organic visitors. It's like, well, how do they even do that? And you look at it, and each month, each year, the people that are searching for their brand name is consistently going up. So it's being attributed again to organic. But if you look deeper, I mean, creating tons of content, tons of social content, tons of podcast videos, all those kind of things, trainings, sponsorship opportunities within their target market. So that's why their organic traffic is going up, because they're doing everything else that is not trackable and scalable by the traditional playbook. And so yeah, that we see that all the time. And I think if there's one key takeaway, it's that, again, just focusing on what intuitively is right, like what type of content is going to resonate with your audience, is going to be helpful, and then what channels we can get in front of them. If you have those pieces right, then it's just about consistency. Enjoy. If you have anything to add to this topic, if you have any of your own anecdotal sort of experiences with this type of marketing, or what you've seen from your own business, we'd love to hear it. Send us a message. As always, give us a like, subscribe, share this with a friend, share it offline, dark social channels, so that we can't track it, but nevertheless they'll get to see the episode. So thanks again.
Growth Marketers is brought to you by One IMS, helping you reach new heights through integrated marketing. One world, one web, one IMS.